Unsolved Crimes newspaper, as a response to Cavalier civil society organization, within the framework of a struggle against religious extremism, presents
apologetica ed è arrivata una convocazione da parte del Papa.
Massimo Introvigne, Italian religion sociologist, doctor of philosophy, professor, founder and managing director of the Center for Studies on New Religions, former representative on combating racism, xenophobia and discrimination at OSCE.
My share greetings to you, Professor Introvigne. And first of all, let me thank you for your time to give the interview to Unsolved Crimes newspaper.
Thank you.
So let me ask you the first question. Not so long time ago, I sent you some links to Facebook groups of HEMA and their publications about Dr. Maltsev. So, in these publications, HEMA people claims that Dr. Maltsev is a cult leader. But the most interesting fact is that they refer to Russian Orthodox Church and Irenaeus Center of Alexander Dworkin. So, Professor Introvigne, how can you classify these statements?
Well, first of all, a word about HEMA. Of course, I'm not an expert on martial arts, so I cannot comment on their statements regarding to martial arts. However, as you know, I have a double hat, and I have been for 30 years lawyer specialized in copyright and a member of the largest European law firm, and it seems to me that it's a typical situation of an association trying to exert a monopoly. Mm-hmm. Of course, all monopolies are promoted as being in the interest of the consumers, but in fact they are in the interest of a small or large group of persons who want to protect their turf and prevent anybody else from entering. I believe the HEMA folks will do well to read the recent book by my colleague Holly Falk on chiropractic. You know, chiropractic is an alternative medicine. Mm-hmm. And for many, many years in the United States, the AMA, the American Medical Association, which of course is much more important than HEMA, is the association to which all American doctors belong. Mm-hmm. They promoted the campaign against chiropractic, saying chiropractic is not good for the patients, it's not good for the consumer. So they were sued, and finally the Supreme Court of the United States established something very important, that the American Medical Association cannot have a monopoly on therapy. So either they stop to attack chiropractors as quacks, and they also said chiropractors were actually members of a cult, which is very interesting for our case, or under the Sherman Act, which is the law against antitrust, the American Medical Association will be punished and perhaps bankrupted. Now you should consider this point. How important is the medical profession? How important for the state, for the government, for the community is regulating medicine? However, even in this case, the Supreme Court of the United States concluded that the American Medical Association has no right to exclude a new competitor. Mm-hmm. Even if what chiropractic does has some mystical religious basis, so they say it's a cult, even if perhaps D.D. Palmer, who was the founder of chiropractic, was a little bit creative about the traditions he studied, perhaps some of his accounts were fictional, like novels, and not to be taken as records of historical facts. But even though the Supreme Court said, you American doctors, you don't have a monopoly. So I believe it's a fair legal conclusion that HEMA cannot have a monopoly on martial arts. Of course, they have the right to say that this or that other master group do not belong to HEMA. That's their privilege. But I believe if they attack some groups by calling them frauds or quacks or cults, they are exactly in the same situation the American Medical Association back 20 years ago or more was in respect of the chiropractors, and they lost their case. So I believe under the rules in this country, in the United States, and HEMA from United States, about monopolies and consumers, I believe it's a very typical situation, and here I'm putting together my experience as an attorney and as a sociologist. All groups creating monopolies, particularly unlawful monopolies under the antitrust laws, they always say, oh, we should protect the consumers against the cults and the quacks and the frauds. But in fact, as the court says in the American Medical Association versus chiropractic case, and in countless other cases, more often than not, monopolies do not deeply care about consumers. They just want to protect their turf against competitors. And it seems to me it's a minor incident, of course, with respect to the claim to a monopoly of such a huge reality as the American Medical Association, but we are basically seeing the same factor. But you mentioned also the cult issue, I believe.
It is known that the HEMA movement originates from the United States. So, as an expert, when have you seen the last time in the United States that organization refers to the Russian Orthodox Church or to the Irenaeus Center of Alexander Dworkin?
In Russia, the Orthodox Church was using a different category, heresy, while in France and in the United States, the anti-cultists were mostly secular, and they tried to use a category of cult as a group creating damages through brainwashing, mind control, undue influence, etc. So the anti-cult movements have a long history which has been studied. Basically, in the US, they lost a number of court cases, particularly in 1990 when the Fishman decision ruled that brainwashing is not a valid category. They have not disappeared, they have less influence with courts of law, but they keep an influence with some media and are supported for different and complicated reasons by some industries and corporations. So they still exist, but they lost a number of court cases, so it's safe to say that the anti-cultists are less influential now than they were in the 1970s or 1980s. Even the support from the French government, and when I say support, I also mean money, because all these organizations need money, is less important than it was in the 1990s, because in France the main problem is Islamic ultra-fundamentalist terrorism, and so most of the money that France consecrated to the fight against cults is now devoted to the fight against what they call radicalization of young Muslims, which is a different business. But I want to insist on the point that American large anti-cult organization, the Cult Awareness Network, which went bankrupted, the American Family Foundation, which became the International Celtic Studies Association, which is somewhat a more moderate approach. They were secular organization. They always say, we don't care about the creeds. You can deny the Trinity, you can deny Jesus Christ is God, we don't care. We care about the deeds. If these people do some bad deeds, we will go after them. Of course, some of the deeds, I believe, were imaginary. I don't believe brainwashing exists. Some of the deeds were very real. Of course, if the question is, were they criminal groups? Of course, they were criminal groups. In the United States, there are 6,000-7,000 different religious movements. Some of them committed crimes. Even groups within the mainline religions, of course, committed crimes. There are rings of Catholic pedophile priests, pedophile rabbis, group within Islam which sympathized or sponsored terrorism. So it's a complicated story. But it was a secular approach. So I have never seen the American anti-cult movement in its expression. Some of them are in their own way serious. You can have a dialogue with them. I disagree with them, but for instance, with the International Celtic Studies Association, I've participated in their conferences. I believe you can have a dialogue with them. I've never seen their line or their definition of a group as a cult dictated by the Russian Orthodox Church or people like Alexander Dworkin, who have a different agenda. For them, a cult is a group who teaches something which is regarded as heresy by the Russian Orthodox Church. So, and Dworkin is also a very controversial character. Most of the, I would call serious American anti-cultists will not touch him, as we say here, with a 10-foot pole, because he was regarded as too radical and too extreme. Now, in Europe, what happened in the last few years in France, in Italy in particular, in my native country, and elsewhere, is the anti-cult movements are small, are struggling, they have no money. So a new leadership is emerging in Russia. Russia, of course, liquidated the Jehovah's Witnesses and went against another 50 or so groups. It's very bad for Russian international image and for the international image of the Russian Orthodox Church. So they started becoming very eager for anti-cultists in countries like France and Italy to say Russia is right, because Jehovah's Witnesses are so bad that what Russia is doing is not breaching religious liberty, but it's protecting the good citizens of Russia. So all of a sudden in Europe we saw Alexander Dworkin becoming vice president of one, not the only one, but an important European anti-cult organization, FECRIS, and actually becoming the most influential leader of FECRIS. And we see time and again European anti-cult websites and publications republish Russian propaganda manufactured mostly by Dworkin and in part by some other people and perhaps by governmental agencies, which is in a way new and is based on a misunderstanding, because many of those who cut and paste Russian material, perhaps for free, perhaps because they have some monetary advantage, I don't know, but are very secular persons. And it's very strange that these secular persons are actually following a line which emanates in certain sector of the Russian Orthodox Church. I want to be very clear. I'm not accusing the Russian Orthodox Church as being as a huge organization following what Dworkin or some other guys do. Of course, in the Orthodox Church there are also people who don't like what Dworkin does. But it's a new phenomenon. We see European secular anti-cultists trying to cut and paste and import propaganda which is actually created in a religious milieu in Russia, which is a part, not the whole, a part of the Russian Orthodox Church. To be honest with you, I've never seen this in America before, or very minimally. Also because Russia doesn't have such a good press in America. You know the story of the interference in the American elections. So Syria, they don't have Ukraine, they don't have a very good press in America. And so he might believe a very small player because they to the best of my knowledge, this Russian propaganda, for instance, about Jehovah's Witnesses is contradicent to the large American media outlets, the television. So he might be just a small player, but because it's small, perhaps they're being successful in actually having what I believe it's a secular organization, because I don't believe HEMA is a Christian Orthodox organization, in buying the definition of cult or material about cults actually emanating from sectors of the Russian Orthodox Church. And I would also say it's not a quality material, because I have read in translation some of the material HEMA links to from Alexander Nepeyev or the Century. It's very cheap. I mean, 3/4 of this is insults. It's not even really a reconstruction of what some groups do, and the other part is plainly wrong. You know, there is this story of a group called the Odessa Templars, which never existed. So it's either wrong or results in a sequel of itself. So as small as it may be, because HEMA is not the New York Times, it's not the CNN, and I say Russian propaganda is mostly targeting these outlets, as small as it may be, I believe it's a clue of how this propaganda coming from some sectors of the Orthodox Church in Russia is trying to infiltrate organizations even in the United States.
How do you think? What is the reason for American martial art organization to promote the opinion of Russian Orthodox Church and Mr. Dworkin?
It's not common even for American professional anti-cultists to follow and take seriously Dworkin on Neveyev. And so here we have people who apparently are not professional anti-cultists, who discover the Renewal Center and the blog of Alexander Neveyev and start linking to Russian article, presumably only a very small percentage of their members understand for linguistic reasons because they are in Russian. And so it will be very interesting to investigate how exactly this Russian propaganda agency, the Irenaeus Center, reach out to HEMA. If there is some connection, or if they simply they are very attentive and follow what's going on Facebook, and since they saw him had some professional monopolistic reasons to attack a certain group, they decided to contact them. But it's very strange, and as I say, in a way it's minimal. I will be more concerned if Russian propaganda material, as it has happened, for instance, in Italy, would appear in some mainline media, but he, I believe, is followed by a comparatively small percentage of Americans. But on the other hand, I take it seriously because I believe this Russian propaganda to be very poisonous and dangerous, and the fact that even through a very very small and when only said and done comparatively unimportant channel. Perhaps this HEMA episode is very minor and not particularly important. Your group will answer and you will continue your activity. I don't believe you will stop your activity because of HEMA's criticism. And again, if I insist, they will risk legal actions under the antitrust laws.
Thank you, dear Professor, for your opinion and for your time.
Okay, see you soon.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, bye.